Hello and welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. We are exploring the high priestly garments in the Old Testament. And today I have some things to teach you about gemstones. There is debate if you compare different translations about what were the gemstones that actually appeared on the chest piece or breast piece of the high priest. And today I'm going to give you my arguments for why I've chosen the gemstones that I've chosen in my translation. So we'll begin with reading my translation, and then we'll talk about the significance, the surprising significance of what we can learn from these gemstones about the book of Exodus, about when this book was written, about what was the context for it. All right, you ready to go? I'm Dr. Carmen Imes, Associate Professor of Old Testament at Biola University. Exodus chapter 28, verse 15. You shall make a chest piece of decision, the work of a skilled weaver, like the workmanship of the ephod you shall make it. Of gold, blue, and purple, crimson, and fine twisted linen you shall make it. It shall be square, doubled over, a span its length, and a span its width. You shall mount on it mountings of stone, 4 rows of stones. A row of carnelian, hematite, and serpentinite, the first row. The second row, turquoise, lapis lazuli, and quartz. The third row, amazonite, agate, and red jasper. The fourth row, amber, sardonyx, and jasper. In settings of gold they shall be mounted. As for the stones, they shall be according to the names of the sons of Israel, 12 according to their names, the engravings of a signet, each according to his name. They shall be for the 12 tribes. Okay, so we have this item that I'm calling a chest piece or chest pouch. Actually, I've had a very difficult time deciding what to call it in English. So in the published translation of my commentary, it's just going to be called the hoshen, which is the Hebrew word for this pouch that's on the high priest's chest. It's a square pocket that measures a span by a span. A span is the distance from pinky finger to thumb. If your hand is spread wide, it's about 9 inches. So 9 inches by 9 inches. So it would cover his chest. And the word span is a unit of measurement in Hebrew, but the word for it, the word zeret, is actually an Egyptian loan word. So once again, we have measurements using Egyptian loan words, which suggests that this is being written or communicated during a time when they had significant contact with Egypt. The word hoshen itself, this square pocket, sometimes translated the chest piece of decision, is possibly related to a couple of different words. So in Hebrew, the word hosen, which is different than hoshen, slightly different, is the word treasure. So perhaps this relates to treasure. In Arabic, a similar word, related word, means beautiful. And in Egyptian, there's a phrase that sounds similar to the word hoshen that means protecting the breast. So it's possible that this technical term that's used only here in the Bible relates either to treasure or beautiful or protecting the breast, or maybe by wordplay relates to more than one of these things. Maybe that's why it seemed particularly appropriate. The gemstones here signify the 12 tribes. So that's a little bit different than the 2 gemstones on the high priest's shoulder that we talked about last week. Those gemstones that are attached to the ephod say that they have the names of the 12 sons of Israel according to their birth. So it's probably the 12 actual sons of Jacob. Whereas here it's gemstones representing the 12 tribes, which are not exactly the same as the 12 sons. So in my estimation, this would mean that the gemstones on his chest represent the 12 sons of Jacob minus Levi, because he's the priest, so the high priest already represents Levi, and minus Joseph, because he's been replaced by his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who become tribal heads. Now, ancient gemstones were named for how they looked. They didn't have precisely scientific names. They were named based on their color, or their, like if it had swirls in it, or some other kind of glitter or something. So, what I have done is based my work on a great article by James Hoffmeier and some others who co wrote this article on what gemstones were actually available in the late Bronze Age period. So, many scholars, you might be aware that many scholars suggest that the book of Exodus was written quite late in Israel's history, long after the events it purportedly describes. And so it's a work of fiction. I am arguing in my commentary that the book of Exodus was written soon after the events it described. And the reason why I have come to that conclusion is in part based on how many Egyptian loanwords are used in the text. But we have an additional clue in this passage that I'm excited to share with you today. So I'm basing my work on the work of these other scholars who studied all the gemstones, where they came from, like where are they mined, when were they available in history. And so you'll notice that my translation differed from most English translations, and I'm going to explain as we go through the gemstones why I am not adopting, say, the NIV or the ESV or the NRSV for my translation, because I think some of these translators have not realized that the names of gemstones that they picked in English were not even available until much later in history. They hadn't been discovered yet, or they weren't traded in that area, etc. So we're going to go through them one by one. I'll run through the 12 and tell you why I think each one should be translated the way it is. And if you want more detail, check out the article. I will link it in the description. So the first gemstone is Odem. And it's only here and in Exodus 39 and Ezekiel 28. So many of these gemstones are only mentioned in Exodus and in Ezekiel 28 when it describes the gemstones around the king of Tyre. Some of them are more common, but many of them only appear here. This one is likely red because Adom means red, and this is Odem. Ruby was not available at this time. So if you're reading a translation that says ruby, like the NET or the NASB, that is mistaken. This is probably carnelian, as it was widely used for seals in the ancient Near East, and it was available at this time. The second gemstone is Pitda, which is sometimes translated as topaz or chrysolite or peridot. I actually don't know how to pronounce it. Peridot. That's actually my birthstone. I'm an August birthday. It can't be peridot because it was unknown in the ancient Near East. It also is unlikely to be topaz. More likely, this is related to the Egyptian word didi, and you have to be a comparative linguist to understand the way words get mutated from one language to another. But the Egyptian is a rare reddish hematite stone. It's quite common in the Levant, and it's almost as valuable or about as valuable as gold is, and it's mined south of Egypt. So it was available in that time. The third stone is baraket, which is a green stone, but it can't be beryl. Sorry, NIV, NET. It can't be emerald. Sorry, NLT, NRSV, NASB, and CEB. And it can't be peridot because none of these were available. They weren't discovered until later in history. This stone, baraket, was mined in Egypt and mentioned in New Kingdom Egypt texts. It probably refers to an Egyptian serpentinite, which is a mottled yellowish green stone or maybe green jasper. The fourth stone, so we're starting in on the second row, is Nophek, which most scholars agree is turquoise, and most translations get this right, although ESV and King James have emerald, which again was not discovered yet. Turquoise is a light blue stone that gradually turns greener as it ages. Turquoise was mined in the Sinai Peninsula, quite near to Mount Sinai, and it was common in Egypt. And here's the kicker. The turquoise mines in the Sinai Peninsula, which is the only place you could get it in the ancient world, Sinai and Edom, those mines closed shortly after the Exodus. And turquoise, which used to be more common in Egypt, completely fell out of use. So if you are 500 years later trying to make up a fictional story for Israel's origins, you don't even know about turquoise because nobody's got any anymore. The fifth stone is saphir, and you might hear there a similarity to sapphire. And indeed, this is likely a blue stone, but it can't be sapphire because sapphire was unknown in this region before the 1st century before Christ. So the NET, NRSV, NASB, CEB, ESV, and King James Version are all wrong to translate this sapphire, even though it sounds like it comes from saphir. Indeed, the word sapphire in English comes from the word saphir, but they didn't have the sapphire stone. So I've got a sapphire on my finger here. You can see that it's this nice, brilliant blue. This isn't a real one, by the way. This is lab created. But the gemstone that they referred to as saphir in ancient times was lapis lazuli, which the NIV and NLT have. And lapis lazuli is a dark blue lazurite stone with minute golden specks of pyrite and white patches or veins in it. So it looks sort of like a constellation, or almost like you're looking at the Milky Way, and you're seeing all these specks in it. So it's beautiful stone, but it's not clear the way sapphire is. The next stone is yahalom, and some translations render this as diamond or moonstone, but neither of those were available before the Roman period. So even the latest suppositions about when Exodus was written couldn't have been thinking of moonstone or diamond because nobody had them yet. The NET and NIV have emerald. Again, emerald wasn't available yet. So perhaps this refers to a milky quartz, which is a rare stone, but it comes from the Negev, which is just north of the Sinai Peninsula, or bluish-white chalcedony. Chalcedony, I don't know how to say gemstone names, which is a rare stone from Saudi Arabia. Both of them are white or pale, and they were available, although they were rare. The next stone that is appearing on the high priest's chest is leshem, and leshem is probably green feldspar or amazonite, and it is rare in Mesopotamia and the Levant, but it was available in the New Kingdom Egypt from Egyptian mines, and it was often used for amulets. It's in fact an Egyptian loanword. And none of the translations I've looked at actually properly render this. They have kind of other names, jacinth, orange jacinth, and ligure. Again, gemstones are not my normal area, so I don't know how to say them all. The next gemstone is shebo, which all the translations that I looked at have agate or agate, and that is indeed probably what it is. It's an Akkadian loanword, perhaps indicating a banded agate, so it would be like striped. It would have stripes in it, and it was commonly used for seals in the Levant. All right, the next word is achlama, which is translated often as amethyst, but it's probably an Egyptian loanword referring to red jasper. And this red jasper comes from Egypt, Sudan, and Saudi Arabia, so it was widely available. Tarshish is the next one. This one's interesting. We know of the city called Tarshish in what's modern-day Spain. That's where Jonah is fleeing to when he flees God's will. This could be a metallic hematite from Spain, but since that was rare in the Levant, it's more likely that this is actually amber. Amber is not technically a gemstone, but a rare hardened tree resin that ranges from yellow to orange, brown, or even red. So it's in that kind of color spectrum. And although it's not technically a gemstone, when people found it, they would have thought of it as being a gemstone because it's similar. So before microscopes, that's what it seemed like it was. So it's actually made from organic material rather than being rock, but it kind of functions like a gemstone. The next one is shoham, which is often translated as onyx or beryl, but again, beryl isn't found yet, and probably this is either amethyst or sardonyx, and it could be an Assyrian loanword, we're not sure. The last one is yaspe, which is, you can hear even the word jasper, that it's derived from this Hebrew word, and it appears only in these texts about the three texts about gemstones in the Bible. This is either a multicolored translucent agate, which it was common in the Levant, or opaque jasper. So it could be green. Green was a pretty common version of this stone in the Levant. In Egypt, it was often red, and rarely they could be multicolored. So why does all this matter? Well, one of the fun discoveries that I made as I was reading and learning about these different gemstones, about colors, about how gemstones were used, is that 4 or 5 of these in our list of 12 are Egyptian loanwords. So all of these were available in New Kingdom Egypt, that is the Late Bronze Age. Now, to be clear, the researchers who wrote the article that I have linked in the description below set out to identify gemstones that were available in that time period. So that's why it's limited to that. But what's great about this list is that not only are they all available, but 4 or 5 of them are Egyptian loanwords. And there are 3 gemstones that only appear here in the Bible, and 2 of those 3 are Egyptian loanwords, and the third is common in the Levant. So what we're looking at is a list of gemstones that is particular to this time period and this geography. These gemstones are not all available later in history. And so if these identifications that the team made are accurate, then it actually helps us date the book of Exodus and the description of the high priestly garments. So this would be a fairly controversial take on the book of Exodus because, again, many scholars try to date Exodus later in history, but I have seen clues all through the book that it is early. So many Egyptian loanwords, vocabulary, and styles of furniture and practices that fit uniquely in an Egyptian context. So as I mentioned, turquoise is no longer available after the time, shortly after the Exodus. So that pushes us, and everyone agrees that Nofek is turquoise. So that no matter how you identify the other gemstones, that pushes this account earlier than many have supposed. We are going to pick up next week with the actual purpose of the pouch, but I want to kind of give us a forward look to verse 29, which we will deal with next week. But in verse 29, it talks about Aaron carrying the names as the representative of these 12 tribes. It's significant that his ministry is explicitly connected to the 12 tribes. Each of the tribal heads bring a gemstone to donate when the supplies are gathered to build the tabernacle. And so what Aaron wears makes him part of the tabernacle furnishings. He fits in almost like a piece of furniture. And the names of the tribes ensure that his ministry is effective for all 12 tribes. Nobody can be left out or sidelined or kind of pushed out because they have the proof on his chest that each of them has a share in his ministry. So it's a way of saying all of you belong. So that really matters. So there's theological significance to it, and there's also historical significance that helps us to date the book of Exodus. Next week, we'll talk about the Urim and Thummim that are inside the pouch and what he does with them. So have a great week and keep reading Exodus.